afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. This is a sort of unusual campaign event for the People's Party of Canada. We are going to try to go a little more in depth than we usually do on campaign events because everything seems to go at speed usually in the campaign. So what we have is, so this is an event put on by the Greater Vancouver Regional Association of the People's Party of Canada. We are a small group of volunteers that coordinates 22 ridings throughout the Lower Mainland. And of our candidates, and we have, out of 22 ridings, we have candidates in, I think, 15, if I'm not mistaken, ridings. And we have 6 of them are going to speak today to a topic that is on our policy, one of our policies, and that plays into their general knowledge base and particular interest. So, and I'll introduce them each as they come up so that you're not trying to remember all 6 of them at the same time. So the first one I'd like to introduce, a word on procedure. We are going to have all the candidates speak for 5 to 10 minutes each, and then our special guest, Maxime Bernier, the leader of our illustrious party, the illustrious leader of our illustrious party, will do a little sum up and give his perspective, and then we'll finish off if we have time with some questions. We'll try to finish up by 4. So I'd like to start by introducing Chris Varga, who is our candidate in Vancouver Centre. And he's going to talk about the red-hot topic of housing.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christopher Varga, and I'm the People's Party candidate for Vancouver Centre District. As a licensed realtor and a lifelong Canadian, I've witnessed firsthand the unfolding housing crisis not just through headlines, but through the experiences of struggling families, working class citizens, and young Canadians who've all but given up hope of ever owning a home. Let's cut through the political noise and let's get into facts. Since 2015, home prices across Canada have increased by more than 92%. In cities like Vancouver and Toronto, the number exceeds 120%. The average price for a detached home in Vancouver today is over $1.9 million. You would need a household income of over $250,000 or more just to get qualified for the mortgage, and that's not even including a down payment. So meanwhile, our national home ownership among Canadians, it's under 35 years of age, has plummeted to just 36%. That's not a good number. The lowest it's been in decades, actually. More and more of their youth are stuck and living at home with their parents, but not by choice, but because they have no other options. So according to the CMHC, we need to build about 5.8 million homes by 2030. And just to restore affordability, we're not even close. Our current building rates, we fall short by at least 3 million homes. Do you think we're going to catch up at this rate, Polyev? So between 2021 and 2023, Canada's population has increased by over 2.5 million people. But during that same time, we've only completed about 550,000 housing units. That's a shortfall of almost 2 million homes. The average Canadian now needs to spend about 60% of their pre-tax income on housing, and according to the RBC's latest Housing Affordability Index, that's the worst in Canadian history. The average Canadian now needs to spend that's not just with ownership, that's actually now 1 in 3 renters spending over 30% of their income on rent as well. And that's qualifying them as housing cost burdens by CMHC standards. The average on a 1-bedroom rental in Canada is now over $2,200 a month, and the average in Vancouver is $2,700 a month. A young person making $20 to $25 an hour full-time cannot live in their own apartment alone. They need a roommate or they got to stay at home. So why is this happening? I'll tell you why. It's because the government after government, and this includes liberals and conservatives, have ignored the basic principles of supply and demand. We've added over 2 million people in the last 2 years alone, and through international immigration, without increasing housing supply proportionally, we've built a system where people are told to get an education, work hard, and they'll still be priced out of the country that their parents built. We've allowed the dream of home ownership to become a luxury reserved for the elites, while everyday Canadians are reduced to renters to live in their own homeland. And between you and me, this needs to end now. The People's Party of Canada, under the leadership of Maxime Bernier, is the only party ready to break this cycle of failure. I've worked in real estate long enough to know that this crisis did not happen by accident. It's a result of failed policies, reckless expansion, and politicians who see GDP numbers instead of families. We've created a system that benefits developers, foreign investors, and political insiders while leaving Canadians behind. And when Canadian families raise concern, they're dismissed as told to work harder, or they're called bigots. Well, I've had enough, and I know that millions of Canadians have as well. Our solution is simple, and it's grounded in reality. Number one, we're going to end the foreign buyer loopholes once and for all. No more foreign ownership of Canadian residential real estate unless you are a citizen. We need to reform zoning regulations and encourage high-density and mixed-use housing in urban centers. We need to remove the red tape that makes it nearly impossible for builders and developers to increase supply and affordability in a quickly fashion. We need to cut federal taxes and fees that inflate our construction costs. And yes, we need to implement a moratorium on mass immigration until our infrastructure, housing, and services catch up to the population we currently have. Because here's the truth. Canada, we are not underpopulated. Our housing is underbuilt. That's the problem. We will fight for a future where homeownership is not a fantasy anymore, but a goal within reach for those willing to work for it. Where our youth can stay, they can build families, and thrive in a country they were born in. When we stop prioritizing short-term political gain and start focusing on long-term national prosperity, we don't need to apologize for putting Canadians first. Canada's our home, and the Canadian dream will endure, not because it's promised, but because we are bold enough to fight for it. Thank you for having me on today.
So our next speaker will be Jim McMurtry, speaking on from the depth of his experience and knowledge on Indigenous issues, referencing our policy. And sorry, Jim is running in Cloverdale, Langley City for the.
Thank you very much. I noticed that there wasn't a land acknowledgement before the meeting. And so I feel I'm in the right place. And I'm having along with the PPC, and I only recently, as recently as yesterday, met the leader, Maxime Bernier, and I thought he was absolutely terrific. Yesterday, both in Chilliwack and in Langley, and we're very lucky to have him here with us. So I was asked by Karin, I've known for a few years, and she said to do Indigenous. And I thought that really what I should be given, not to take away from anybody else, as a longtime teacher, I should have been given something to do maybe with education or with the woke stuff, because that certainly is something that is eroding public confidence and education and hurting a lot of kids. But I'll leave that to people who probably are going to do a better job with it anyway. But I'm happy to do the Indigenous because it explains why I'm no longer teaching. I haven't for 4 years, because I said that the kids died from disease, those who did so tragically in residential schools long ago. Many places today, I'd still feel uncomfortable saying that. I find it really fascinating. This is the one comment, I don't know if Mr. Bernier remembers, but I wanted to say just one thing to him yesterday, and that was that my big frustration is how many people in our country now, particularly leaders of our institutions, duck from issues. So it's not just a question of saying the right thing or the wrong thing. It's not even being able to talk about things. And I think that's particularly tragic in the school system because kids, we're developing them, preparing them for the challenges that meet ahead. My colleague here, Chris, talked about something very serious, how hard it is for the younger generation to get into the housing market. So the idea of closing discussion as opposed to opening it is highly anti-educational. I read and I won't go through as thoroughly as Chris, but I was absolutely delighted when I looked at the PPC platform for Indigenous people because it was everything that I imagined. And I should say to you that I went to graduate school and my thesis supervisor for my master's degree was the Prime Minister, Mark Carney's father, Robert. And so that was, this dates me, of course, because that was in the mid-'80s. And we talked about residential schools as part of the program. He was the chair of the department called Educational Foundations. I'm kind enough to create a nice relationship with me and get me through the program. And he said I was the quickest ever through the program. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I just want to get rid of me. But he was an incredible man. And we talked about educational policy. At the time, it was called Indian Educational Policy. And there was never any condemnation of residential schools. That wasn't the point. The point is what can we do for the groups in our society who are least successful? And there's some groups that come to Canada and do very well. And I know I'm in a room where I can speak without curtailing my speech in an unnecessary way. I remember my uncle, who was a doctor, saying that they have to be very careful to have quota programs at the University of Toronto Medical School because otherwise it would be all Chinese and Jews that would be would be doctors because they were the ones that performed the most. And I'm noticing that's still true in schools today as a teacher, seeing that there's some groups that do very well, the Chinese, Koreans, and in particular, but all sorts of groups. And then, of course, there are groups that don't do as well. Now, there's two approaches that one can take. One can decide to be what they call DEI or something and say what we need to do is level our society. That's the great Canadian tendency. Then bring down the more successful groups and raise up the less successful groups. Well, whether Robert Carney was really a DEI guy or not, I don't think he was. I think his heart was in the right place. He wanted to figure out how to help the one group in Canada that was struggling the most and not just adjusting to Canadian society, but just managing to stay in school. So there were lots of things that were tried, as people know, last century, to educate in a successful way Indigenous people. And none of them really seemed to work well, whether it was residential schools or day schools or integration and all sorts of programs. And so what he did was he spent time with his students like me to try and figure out what would work. And that's sort of the excitement that I carried into the teaching profession. I was a principal for a time and a college instructor, and I've done various things and also presented in different schools across Europe because I was there, Switzerland for 6 years. And it was always that idea, what can we do to make things better for all groups? But let's start as Canadians with Indigenous people since they are ostensibly the group that's the least successful. It wasn't ever a case of going, why don't we call this group of Canadians, a horrible name in that Manichaean sense of they're the baddies, and these other group here are the goodies, and we can only say positive things about the negative things about the others. It just doesn't make for adult conversation. So the point I would want to make above all, and I haven't got the hook yet from Karin, but I sense that's coming. She's kicking me occasionally. And that is that, first of all, I think it's absolutely absurd. And I feel at home with the PPC in saying this, that we're a country that's based on, obviously, rules and rules-based society. We have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And I think that's good news. I won't repeat it because it's rude. But no, she's wonderful. But say to you, with a society like ours, we have this tendency, and I certainly see it with the Conservatives and the Liberals, to put everybody into groups. And the school system is absolutely horrible because you're putting the kids into race buckets and into gender, of course, categorizations, and you're getting rid of literature, and you're doing all sorts of things right now. And it's all because of this group or that group. And you know that. You wouldn't be here if you weren't obviously conscious of how identity politics works and how it's captured the school system. But I'm resistant to all that. And I believe in individuals. I was told one of the allegations against me was that what if there were Indigenous kids in the classroom when I was saying that there is no evidence of murder in residential schools. And this idea of, again, I think there's nothing worse than looking at an individual in the classroom, a kid, and thinking that kid is not what's inside him or her, but all these birth certificate characteristics and things that the child can't do anything about. And so I'm very strongly an advocate of individual rights. And I care about if there's a whole group of people in rural Canada or northern Canada or Indigenous people in more isolated areas. I care about them, and I like to see them to be successful. And the model that we have in place right now isn't working. So if you get a chance to look at the PPC platform, it's absolutely revolutionary. And the sense is, first of all, is looking at them as individuals. It's recognizing that welfare is not going to help individuals or communities, and that they should assume the same rights and responsibilities as other Canadians. And so that's again, that's the most important thing here. So I know I got 2 more minutes left. And I'm going to use it because I'm a teacher, being out of work for a few years, so I don't get this opportunity very, very often. But I think it's an important thing to say, and I'd like to end on a bit of a different note, and that comes back to residential schools. It's one of the issues that nobody wants to talk about in this election, and I'm going to make sure that I talk about it quite a bit. And that is, we've evolved in the last 4 years to the point where we can now say, well, residential schools, yes, they were bad, but that didn't mean that there was genocide, or that doesn't mean that Christian missionaries were murderers, or that doesn't mean that early Canada was this terrible racist state. That's not good enough for me. So I'm somebody who seeks out what the truth is. It guides me. Residential schools weren't bad at all. And I don't know how you can make a judgment about any school system and say everything's bad and over there everything's good. That's absolutely absurd. If you get to know the men and the women that worked in those schools, including, again, my thesis super Robert Carney, you would learn that there were many, many wonderful men and women who devoted themselves fully to help those kids. And so I think we need to move away from these ridiculous blanket statements and put our minds together and create a Canadian that serves Canada that serves all individuals and gives everybody responsibilities equally. Thank you.
All right, you can tell the people who have a lot of public speaking experience. I gave Jim 10 minutes. I gave each speaker 10 minutes, and he took 9 minutes and 35 seconds. Not bad. I also realized that I hadn't actually introduced myself at the outset, so I'm just going to take a few seconds to do that. My name is Karin Litzcke, and I was a candidate for the PPC in Vancouver East in 2019 and then again in 2021. And something that Jim said reminded me that one of the things that I like most about PPC and about Maxime is his ability to bring clarity to the analysis. Even if the subject is complicated, Maxime always brings out the key principle that's necessary for understanding it. And one of the things that, I don't know, somehow I got into my 50s and as a Canadian and didn't understand yet, that there are some things that are federal responsibilities and some things that are provincial responsibilities. So if you want to do stuff in education, you have to run provincially, which I know you've also done. So that's the kind of, I think for many of us listening to Maxime over the years, there's a clarity that comes to you when you listen to him speak, because he frames things and gives us a structure for it. Anyway, our third speaker today is going to be Natasa Sirotic, who is running in the riding of Delta and has been on our roster for quite some time already, and I think has set herself up nicely for this run for office. So welcome, Natasa. Hey. So I am a mathematics teacher, initially an engineer, so I love science, and I think education, even though it's not a federal jurisdiction, is something that a lot of our children and students and people growing up suffer from the lack of thereof. But today I will talk about climate change, because a lot of young people are fearful and they're being fed all sorts of alarmistic claims. And so I want to bring the other perspective to this. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natasa Sirotic, and today I want to take you on a journey through climate change, but not through the lens of headlines or policies, but through the rigorous perspectives of physics and botany. We'll explore insights from three brilliant minds: Professor William Happer, a physicist, Professor Valentina Zharkova, an astrophysicist, and Diana Kruger-Beresford, a botanist. I read all their books or watched some YouTube videos from them. Their work challenges us to think critically about the Earth's climate and our role in it. Let's start with physics and Professor William Happer, a renowned physicist from Princeton University. Happer's work focuses on how carbon dioxide, or CO2, interacts with Earth's atmosphere. CO2 is often labeled a greenhouse gas, and it's true that it absorbs and traps some of the infrared radiation that Earth emits to space, contributing to warming. But Happer emphasizes that this effect is not as dramatic as some claim. He argues that the climate system is complex and CO2's impact diminishes as its concentration rises, a concept called saturation. According to Happer's calculations, if we were to double the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere from 420 parts per million today to 840 parts per million, the global temperature would rise by approximately 0.8 to 1 degrees centigrade. That's far less than 2.5 or 4 degrees Celsius predicted by some climate models. Why the difference? Happer points out that water vapor, not CO2, is the dominant greenhouse gas, and feedback effects like clouds can counteract CO2's influence. He urges us to question alarmist narratives and focus on evidence. CO2 contributes to warming, but its effect is modest, and life on Earth has thrived at much higher CO2 levels in the past. In fact, 5 times as high at a year 1000 made Greenland a flourishing place with a lot of growth of plants. Now, let's zoom out to the cosmos with Professor Valentina Zharkova, an astrophysicist who studied the sun's role in Earth's climate. The sun is the ultimate driver of our climate, providing nearly all the energy that fuels Earth's systems. Zharkova's research dives into the sun's internal dynamics, particularly its magnetic field, which is generated by the rotation of its core. She has identified cycles in the sun's magnetic activity, driven by 2 dynamo components operating at different depths. These components interact, sometimes amplifying solar output and sometimes dampening it, over cycles lasting roughly 11 years, with longer-term patterns spanning centuries. Zharkova's work suggests we are entering a period of reduced solar activity similar to the modern minimum of the 17th century, when solar radiation dipped and Earth experienced cooler temperatures. From 2020 to about 2053, she predicts weaker solar cycles, which could reduce the solar radiation reaching Earth by a small but measurable amount, potentially offsetting sun warming. However, the models don't deny CO2's role. They simply highlight that solar variability is a significant natural factor we can't ignore. The sun's cycles remind us that climate is influenced by forces far beyond human control, and we must account for them in our predictions. Finally, let's bring it back to Earth from Diana Kruger-Beresford, a botanist who offers a refreshing perspective on CO2 from the world of plants. CO2 isn't just a gas in the atmosphere, it's the lifeblood of photosynthesis, the process that fuels plant growth and, by extension, all life. Kruger-Beresford has proposed a practical solution to concerns about CO2 emissions: plant more trees. Specifically, she suggests that if every person on Earth, about 8 billion of us, planted 7 trees, we could significantly offset CO2 levels. That's 56 billion trees, each absorbing roughly 10 to 40 kilograms of CO2 per year as it grows, depending on species and conditions. This idea is grounded in botanist truth. Trees are nature's carbon sinks. They convert CO2 into oxygen and biomass, storing carbon in their trunks, roots, and soil. Beyond CO2, trees cool the planet through transpiration, stabilize ecosystems, and support biodiversity. Kruger-Beresford vision isn't a silver bullet. Land availability, water, and maintenance matter, but it's a reminder that nature offers solutions that are often simpler and more effective than complex technological fixes. Plus, who doesn't love the idea of a greener planet? Let me tie these perspectives together. Harper's physics tells us that doubling CO2 won't lead to catastrophe. It's a small nudge in a complex system. Zharkova's astrophysics reminds us that the sun's cycles shape climate in ways we are still unraveling. And Kruger-Beresford's botany shows us that planets are powerful allies in managing CO2, offering benefits far beyond carbon storage. Together, they challenge the dominant narrative of climate doom, urging us to think critically and creatively. Before I close, a word of caution. Science thrives on debate, not dogma. The climate system is vast, spanning physics, chemistry, biology, and more. And no single model or solution captures it all. Policies like net zero or mass electrification have costs and trade-offs, often hitting the poorest hardest. Instead of fear, let's embrace curiosity. Plant trees, study the sun, refine our models, and prioritize solutions that lift humanity while respecting nature. Thank you for listening. Let's keep asking questions and seeking truth together. Wow, we're doing excellent with the timing. Thank you. So I was, as we sat down, I started to juggle the speaking order, and I sort of went back and forth about who I would put in what sequence. And I suddenly, and when I got my list to my satisfaction, I realized I had completely by accident put the first 3 speakers on this side of the stage, and the other 3 are on this side. So between tables, I'm just going to take a moment to say we had intended to have a 7th speaker with us today, and that is Megan Murphy, who is the current candidate in my previous riding of Vancouver East. For those of you who know of Megan Murphy, she's a fairly prominent critic of transgender ideology, and that would have been the policy that she was speaking to. And she also left Canada during COVID for reasons of persecution and coercion. So Megan is with us only on paper because she had booked her flight to come. Yes, she was supposed to arrive yesterday and be with us today. When she tried to access her Canadian bank account and discovered that her funds had been frozen. So the timing is quite remarkable for 2 reasons. First of all, when she called her bank and found out to inquire why her bank account had been frozen, they told her that they were simply following orders from the CRA, and they gave her a name and a number of a guy at the CIA that she should, CIA, was that a Freudian slip? CRA, that she should call. So she calls him, and his voicemail says that he's on vacation for the next 5 days. So this guy froze her bank account and then went on vacation for a total of 9 days. So today is the day she will be finding out what the actual purported reason is for the frozen bank account. But regardless, she felt very uncomfortable about coming back to the country because she had no idea what else would be awaiting her. Plus, it would be very difficult to function in the country without her access to her Canadian funds. So we are missing Megan Murphy, but that's the story there. So we're moving across to the next table. Then I'm next going to put on Ehsan Arjmand, and Ehsan is running in the riding of North Van Capilano, and brings a perspective on the topic of freedom. Thank you, Ehsan.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with all intelligent, dynamic individuals. Maxime, the first time I met Maxime in person. It was my pleasure to meet with you. My name is Ehsan Arjmand, as Karin mentioned. I am 42 years old. I immigrated to Canada in 2009. I'm a practicing professional engineer, and I have a 9-year-old boy. And if you ask me what would be your top 3 priorities for your son to live in a country, I would always say freedom, freedom, and freedom. And because I experienced some type of life back home in Iran, which I want to talk about it, and I think freedom has been taken for granted in Canada, and there would be a good analogy, like how things get started and where they end up to. So, and then the question comes to mind, so what is freedom? Because if you listen to the speeches of leader of some of the world's most brutal regime, like Islamic Republic of Iran or former regime of Gaddafi or Saddam, you'll hear the word freedom repeated again and again. Yet in those countries, real freedom is the one thing their people lack the most. I want to specifically talk about Iranian regime, that currently is one of the most brutal, repressive government in the world. Before this unholy alliance of leftists and Islamists in 1978 to overthrow the Shah of Iran in a revolution that only 4% of people of Iran participated. The remaining, they were just observing and looking, and they didn't take any action. So that's how important that we know that how 4% of crazy people can overthrow a country and eliminate the freedom that we are all enjoying. Majority of people were complacent of their freedom. Iran, before this Islamic communist revolution, was a free, rapidly developing nation. Every person, regardless of gender, sex, religion, they had freedom to be part of this country's development. Women, they could be a pilot, they could dance, they could sing. Now this is like a far-fetched dream for Iranian women. So after this revolution, after 46 of that, Iranian paid a lot of price. Only last year, we had 1,000 executions, the highest number in the world in Iran. And a lot of activists like Fiona Wang have died under extremely suspicious circumstances, and we don't put those numbers, include them to that 1,000. So my point is, and then after all, leaders like Khamenei declares himself the ultimate arbitrator of truth, claiming to understand the real meaning of freedom. But in reality, their definition of freedom involves a state-controlled media, forced narrative, and brutal punishment for dissent, including imprisonment, censorship, and execution. So I just try to give you a picture about what Iran used to be and how it became overnight and rapidly. And sadly, Iran is not an exception. Canada is not an exception. We are all countries. Canadians, they think it never comes to them, but it comes because across the world, we've seen how free societies can fall into dictatorship. It often happens gradually through the slow erosion of free speech, the manipulation of media, and prosecution of truth tellers. Eventually, only one ideology is tolerated, and anyone who thinks differently is punished. So I think we can all relate to it right now. So how things get started. As an Iranian Canadian, I'm deeply concerned about the path Canada has taken over the last decade, because, as I mentioned, as history teaches us a hard truth, a government that controls the narrative cannot be trusted to protect freedom. They co-opt the language of liberty to consolidate power, and when they challenge, they unleash well-funded, coordinated propaganda machines, often paid for with our tax dollars, to discredit, demonize, and cancel those who speak out. In the most extreme cases, dissenters are silenced permanently. That's why I'm proud to stand with People Party of Canada, the party committed to repeal Bill C-11, a bill that gives the federal government sweeping power to control media and online content. It is a bill that legalizes censorship and threatens freedom of speech in the name of regulations. Also, as an Iranian Canadian, something else is really bothering me, and I want to talk about it. It's about Islamophobia and Islamist ideology. No one understands the destructive force of Islamist ideology when they gain power better than Iranian people. We watched it collapse a free and progressive nation almost overnight. Speaking the truth about this is not Islamophobia, it is historical fact. And yet, liberal NDP introduced motion M103, a motion that condemns religion discrimination, but specifically mentions only one religion, Islam, and fails to even define the term Islamophobia. Let me be clear. This is not about the religion. This is not about something that some Muslim people, they want to practice privately. I'm talking about oppressive ideology that silence legitimate voices under guise of tolerance. The PPC is committed to repeal M103 to protect freedom of speech for me, for you, and for all our kids. Over the last decade, what many now call Canada's lost decade, the Liberal NDP have worked tirelessly to chip away at our freedom, and we simply cannot afford to give them another term. But the truth is, even the Conservative Party have followed a similar path. Pierre Poilievre has repeatedly refused to engage with respected independent voices, for example, Patrick Bet-David and Alex Jones, figures with wide audience and serious influence. Meanwhile, some of his long-time conservative supporters dismiss these voices as far-right, which is unfortunately has become a modern code word for anyone who dares to challenge the status quo. Here's the truth. Here's my message to Pierre Poilievre. Here, you are either pro-freedom and open to new voices, or you are not. Standing in the middle of the road is dangerous. You risk getting hit from both sides. It's a Margaret Thatcher famous quote. Yeah. That's why I firmly believe that the PPC is the only party that truly stands for freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, and freedom of practicing your own shit, whatever you want to do. Yes. I'm proud to be part of PPC movement. We believe in freedom of conscience and freedom of expression are maximally protected. And I have to repeat it again. We believe when freedom of conscience and freedom of expression are maximally protected, a nation thrives. It strengthens our intellectual life, encourages ideological diversity, fosters greater understanding, and lays the foundation for all other freedoms that make a democracy truly works. Thank you very much for your time.
So I was so riveted I forgot to hold up his time flags, but I think but he stayed well within the time. Beautifully done, and thank you, Ehsan. The next voice we're going to hear from is John Eady, who is our candidate in Vancouver Quadra. I think that's the longest, I'm not sure, between the two of you, the longest trip within the riding to get here today. John is going to speak on the topic of immigration and perhaps has a similar breadth of experience to bring. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I've been told that my accent is heavy and I speak fast, so I'll just say a few things so you can get accustomed to my pitch. And for that reason, Karin, maybe you can extend me the grace of a few more minutes just as I get accustomed.
Warm up.
Listening to my colleagues speaking, I can't help but love how all our points dovetail into each other. We didn't have prep, but I see how it shows the People's Party's position in this time that we're in. The leader of thought in defining character and Canada's character in the years to come. My name is John Eady. I live and work at UBC, and I'm paying due respect to Maxime, who I'm meeting for like the fourth time now. I'm going to speak on immigration, and I'll try to tie it with democracy. Reason being, I immigrated to Canada in 2017 from Nigeria. I thought that Nigeria was the most repressive and undemocratic country, but it seems like Iran took the lead on that. But why this is important to me is because it shows the departure that I was trying to escape from in Nigeria and which I'm finding here in Canada. Our position as a party on immigration is a moratorium, and that is sensible. The reason is, if you think you're going the wrong course, it makes sense to pause and take stock, as if you're going the right direction, and then you course correct. Now, I'll give two examples to buttress this, and I'll tie it to our democratic experience as Canadians. I'll read you a story that was published in the Toronto Sun in August of 2024. I quote, "A Muslim mass prayer service captured on video shut down one of Canada's busiest intersections last Saturday, but cops says no laws were violated. The cops say in Canada, no permit is required to hold a demonstration, as peaceful assembly and expression, including prayers, are protected under the Charter of Rights of Freedom." When I read this, two things came to mind. I wish they had offered the same courtesy to the Freedom Convoy. The second is, I will not argue nor push back on what they have said, but I'll give you an example from Nigeria where I grew up. Aside from Nigeria's civil war, the biggest civil unrest has been along religious lines. Christians and Muslims have fought and spilled blood because the leaders have failed to cohesively lead religious cohesion among the population. And if we are seeing reports like this come up in Canada in 2024, it's a warning bell. It's to say that immigrants should immigrate and imbibe a culture. There should be something waiting for them to learn and to adapt to. And I think that the character of the country, how various religions should coexist and forge a new Canada, which they are not part of, should be up and center. And this emphasizes why the People's Party's position to put a moratorium on immigration is sensible, because we clearly need to take a pause and prepare what the rules should be democratically for new entrants to support religious expression and to protect the rights of other members of society. So I'll leave that as it is. The next example that I will give is one that has been very close to my heart, and it hurt me a lot when I heard the announcement that Maxime Bernier was denied participation in the leaders' debates. Again, I'm speaking on about true democratic character, which we hope that new entrants to Canada would learn. I think that the decision of the Leaders Commission is very, very undemocratic. And I think it's actually very sad that no other party leader any leader, any top leader in Canada has actually raised a voice to condemn. So I'm trying to just show you a path from the Democratic Authority of Elections Canada through the Leadership Commission's mandate to see how they deviate from the path. We are a democratic country. Elections Canada, through the Electoral Act, was set up for one purpose only: to promote and protect and advance the democratic expression of Canadians. By their own websites, they have a link. Excuse me. Their mission says ensuring that Canadians can express their democratic rights to vote and to be a candidate. The underscore here is that the democratic rights of Canadians, which means that everything that the Commission does or that Elections Canada does should actually save our democracy. And they went on to establish the Leaders Commission in 2015, in 2018, I beg your pardon. And they said by their own website that their mandate is to hold two leadership debates in French and in French and in English. And they say this about leaders' debates. I quote, "Leaders' debates play an essential role in Canada's federal elections. These debates engage Canadians in the electoral campaign. They help inform your vote," and I'll just cut it off there. The Commission admits that the debates that they host helps inform the choices of Canadians. Yet, by their own admission, they say the criteria that they set to pick the members of the debates is based on electability. That is a truncation of the democratic process. That is making the choice on behalf of the electorate. And that's why I expected all members of society, all other party leaders to go up in arms and say, well, we're trying to see democracy, even if your decision favors us and disfavors your opponent, we cannot throw away the baby with the bathwater. We have to save our democracy. Our part this year, I gave these two examples to say our position on immigration is very vital. We have to prepare a landing space. My friends Chris and Jim have spoken well about what the economic impact of immigration can be, while I was speaking about what the sociological and the social character of the country that we're inviting immigrants to come and enjoy should be. And I'm very proud that the People's Party is taking the lead, not just in forging ahead what true governance is, but leading in defining what our social conversation should be around the culture that Canada should be. And I thank you for listening. I give you the chance. Thank you again.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John. So we have Fiona is our last speaker. Fiona Wang is our candidate in Vancouver Kingsway. Has also been preparing for this candidacy for quite a while. And so it's a pleasure to hear her speak today on the trials and tribulations that many people suffered during the COVID years.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Fiona Wang, your People's Party candidate for Vancouver Kingsway. And I'm here to fight for a Canada where freedom isn't a slogan, it's our bloodline. Yeah. As an English teacher, I spent years teaching students critical thinking and to question narratives. As a paralegal, I fought for justice where laws betrayed fairness. And as someone born in Wuhan under a communist regime censorship, I know the chill of truth being erased. George Orwell warned us in 1984, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. During COVID, our government tried to control all three, past, present, and future. And I'm running to stop the Orwellian nightmare from swallowing Canada. I grew up in Wuhan, the the city branded as COVID's origin. I wasn't there when the virus hit, but I watched my birthplace ignite global fear. In China, crises are weapons, dissent crushed, questions banned, obedience demanded. I fled that world for Canada, but 2020 brought echoes of it here. Unconstitutional lockdowns gutted small businesses, cafes and shops on Kingsway turned to ghosts, while corporate giants thrived. Travel bans with vaccine passports, ArriveCan's digital leash chained Canadians to their homes. Mandates forced experimental vaccines, threatening jobs for those who dare think for themselves. Orwell's Big Brother would have nodded approvingly. Control the body, control the mind. Let's talk vaccines. We were sold a lie. Get the shot, stop the spread, save the world. But the truth slipped out. Vaccines didn't stop transmission. Data from Israel, the UK, even Canada's health reports show vaccinated people still spread COVID. Yet the mandates tightened. 2 shots, 3, more boosters, or you're barred from planes, jobs, even coffee shops. Aldous Huxley in Brave New World warned of a softer tyranny, controlled through compliance, not guns. COVID's vaccine push felt like his dystopia. Obey or be expelled from society. These policies weren't just wrong, they were unconstitutional. Our charter is our shield. Section 6 guarantees mobility. Vaccine passports mocked it. Section 7 protects your bodily autonomy. Mandates trampled it. Section 2 defends free speech. Yet doctors and citizens were silenced for questioning. Lockdowns confine healthy people indefinitely. No charter clause allows that. The PPC, with Maxime Bernier's fearless clarity, exposed this betrayal, while other parties cheered on for Big Brother. Orwell wrote in Animal Farm, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. During COVID, the more equal were the bureaucrats and CEOs, while you, the worker, the parent, were left to beg for scraps of freedom. Then came the Freedom Convoy, our rebellion against this dystopia. In January 2022, truckers, the pulse of our nation, drove to Ottawa. They weren't just drivers. They were families, veterans, small business owners, Canadians like us, waving flags, not weapons. They built community, fed the homeless, shoveled snow, set up bouncy castles for kids. They demanded an end to mandates and lockdowns that broke their backs while politicians died mask-free. Yeah. Orwell's Winston Smith dreamed of such courage, writing in his forbidden diary to resist erasure. The truckers were our Winstons, honking for truth. But Trudeau's response? Pure 1984. He called them racist, a fringe minority. Classic doublespeak to rewrite reality. He froze bank accounts, targeting grandmas donating $50 to keep truckers warm. He invoked the Emergencies Act, a war measure to unleash police on peaceful protesters. That's not Canada. It's the thought police. I know censorship. I lived it in Wuhan, where truth was the enemy. The PPC stood alone with the truckers, vowing to protect dissent because, as Orwell knew, silencing one voice kills us all. What would the PPC have done differently? Everything. No lockdowns. Shield the vulnerable, but keep businesses open and kids in school. No mandates. Your body, your choice. Always. No passports. Charter rights are not negotiable. We would have boosted hospitals, not surveillance apps. We would have welcomed the truckers' voices, not crushed them. And we would have let truth breathe every scientist, every citizen, free to speak. Orwell warned, freedom is the right to tell people what they do not want to hear, and the PPC lives that. COVID didn't just break our economy, it broke trust. Kids in my classroom fell behind. Families fractured over vaccine status. Suicides climbed. Vancouver Kingsway, I'm running because I've lived Orwell's warnings. Control, erasure, fear. As your MP, I'll defend our Constitution, carry the trucker's torch, and fight for a Canada where no crisis steals your voice. The PPC isn't just a party. It's a revolt against elites who make us pigs under Napoleon's rule, as Animal Farm warned. This election, vote People's Party. It's time to put people before politics and principles before power. Vote for me in Vancouver Kingsway. And on April 28th, let's elect a government that works for you. Thank you.
Well, a good portion of the volunteer energy in the PPC goes to candidate selection, and I'd say we did all right this time. So I'm going to invite Maxime Bernier up to give some summarizing remarks.
Thank you, everybody. As you can see, we have great candidates. They're ready to fight for you, with you. And we have tough criteria when we are selecting our candidates. They have to share Western civilization values. They have to believe in individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. They have to be ready to fight for you. And that's why, and one criteria that I like when we are doing our selection, some of our candidates are telling me and our team, I'm not a politician. I like that. We don't want to have professional politicians. We want to have people, I call them, more than ordinary Canadian, extraordinary Canadian, because they are standing up, speaking for you. They have the courage of their conviction, because what we want to do together, it's a peaceful revolution with our ideas, and they're very powerful. But we need candidates across the country that would be ready to do that. And our candidates also need you guys. We need your support. We need you to be out there and to speak about our values and your values and about our platform to your friends, to your family. If you're doing that, it would be easier for our candidates to have more support. And actually, the time is now to act. We cannot wait. Look at these populist reform in UK with Nigel Farage, in France with Marine Le Pen, in US, yes, with President Trump. That is happening here also in Canada. And the PPC is that movement with our candidates across the country. And yes, we are different, and our goal is to offer to every Canadian another option, a very different option. The option that is based on strong policies, strong ideas. And that's why that's special, because usually in politics, our candidates will do survey, polling, they will try to know what you want to hear, and they will do focus group to find the right word to tell you what you want to hear and to be able to be elected. But what they're doing, and they're speaking about our ideas, and that's always the same platform at every election, always the same ideas. We don't do polling and focus group, not because we don't want to hear from you, not because we don't want to be elected. Yes, we want to be elected, but we strongly believe that the population has been manipulated by the leftist media, and some journalists who are not journalists. They are mostly, some of them are activists, leftists. So we are out there to tell you the truth based on facts with, our policies. And we believe that you are able to understand and to promote these policies with us. So we try to appeal to your intelligence as a voter. So that's what we are doing. And they're doing that. I've been elected for 13 years in Parliament, and I know it would be easier for me and for our candidates to be elected if we are telling you today that Trump is the enemy. It's because of him that everything is going wrong in our country and we are poor and have a fake patriotism like these other leaders. But no, we are up there. We have a vision for this country. And our goal is to communicate that vision. And I hope that all across the country, our candidates are doing that. And my hope is more people can wake up, can be part of the change, can be the change with our candidates and with us. Because if we do that together, we're going to win. It's a question of time. I know we're going to win. We have the best ideas and the best vision. I don't know when, but I hope it will be at this election. You can count on our candidates. You can count on us. We're going to be there after the election also, until we win that battle of ideas. And if we don't win, I don't see a bright future for our country. We want to save this country. And we think that, we are able to save this country because we know that it is not the government, our actual government or another government, liberal or a conservative one. They don't have the solution. They don't want to speak about the real solution. And if we don't do our bold reforms, I don't know what will happen with our country. I'm scared about the separatist movement in Quebec and in Alberta. They have a reason to want to be separated and building their own country. I don't want that. I like this country. We can keep this country united and prosperous if we are following our constitutions. And that's what we want to do. Like during COVID-19, we had a great constitution. And we don't need to change our constitution. We just need to respect our constitution. And some people are telling me, well, Maxime, your candidates must have only one passport if they want to be loyal to our country. That must be a condition for being prime minister, to have one passport and being loyal to our country. Yes and no. Yes and no. Who destroyed our country the last 10 years? Justin Trudeau. He has only one passport. He's a Canadian, and he's the one who destroyed our country economically, socially, culturally, and he was one of us. So we need to vote for people who share our values. That's the most important. And our candidates here are doing that. They are giving their time during this campaign and before this campaign for you guys, for everybody across the country. They are working. They have other things to do. They can stay at home and just look at what is happening to our country. But they decided to stand up, speak out, and be the change, be the agent of change. And that's why I'm proud of them, because it can be tough. Now, they're politicians. And when you are fighting in a political party, you have your opponents that are coming against you. They're lying about you, and they try to discourage you. But we at the PPC, we are saying the same thing for the last 10 years, and so I think we are gaining credibility. It's very rare in politics, a politician that would be credible. Usually the credibility of our politician is very low. But when you are saying the same thing, and when you can find a video of our candidates, of me saying that at the first election in 2019 or the last election in 2021, and still today? It's because we strongly believe in what we are telling you. We are telling you the truth. And now it's not going well in this country. It's very tough for everybody. And the reality is, if we don't do the real changes, it can be worse. That inflation of about 5% can be like that for the next 10 years because of these huge deficits. The unity of this country, it can disappear in 2027. In Quebec, we have a young, charismatic leader, the leader of the Parti Québécois, and, he's ahead in the polls right now in Quebec if there's a provincial election. The provincial election in Quebec will be in 2026. And that leader of the PQ said that if you vote for the PQ, you are voting for a referendum on the independence. And he said, I will do that referendum 1 year after the election. So we may have another referendum on the separation in Quebec in 2027. And something may happen in Alberta. Why? Because of bad policies, because of mass immigration. When Pierre Elliott Trudeau was the leader in Canada and our prime minister, the PQ was in power in Quebec and we had our first referendum with René Lévesque. And now you have Trudeau's son, Justin, and he tried to destroy our society and our culture. And I know in Quebec, in Quebec, Quebecers are very proud. They want to keep their language. They want to save their culture. But with mass immigration, now they're coming to Quebec. They don't speak English or French. They don't integrate into the Quebec society. And Quebecers are saying, we cannot tolerate that. And now they're looking at the PQ. And the leader of the PQ is speaking a little bit like me. He's end the mass immigration. We must control our immigration. And that's destroying the province of Quebec. So we don't know what will be the future. But if our policies are adopted at the federal level, that's the only way to save this country and to unite this country. Because the culture in Quebec is different than the culture in BC. The culture in BC is different than the culture in PI. That's our country. It's a diverse country. But more and more diversity is killing our country. Canada is unique. So that's why our constitution is unique. If you read our constitution, every province has more autonomy. So right now in Alberta, they cannot exploit their natural resources. They have the federal government that is blocking them with legislations and climate change. And you have, in Quebec, they want to have more control about their immigration. But in our constitution, if you read the constitution and you respect the constitution, every province will have more autonomy and the federal government will be a smaller government that won't interfere in provincial jurisdictions, won't tell you what to do or what not to do. And that's why that's the only way to keep this country united. We need to have a radical decentralization in line with our constitution. But now you have Poilievre and Carney that are saying it's okay, all these national programs that Trudeau created, they are unconstitutional, like the dental care program. It's nice, but it's under the provincial jurisdictions. We must let provinces to deal with that, not interfering. So there's a lot of programs like that at the federal level that are not in line with the Constitution. And the big one is the huge deficit. The federal government is spending money that we don't have, in provincial jurisdictions to buy votes. So our party, the People's Party, is there to fight to regain our country like the father of our constitutions wanted more than 150 years ago. And I think that our time is coming because I can see that movement all across the Western world, and our candidates are ready to fight with you. So I hope that you will support our candidates, help them. They need volunteers. Yes, you can do it. They need also some money. You're doing a campaign, we need money. And, if we spend about $1 million, the PPC at the national level, if you compare that with what the Liberals and the Conservatives will spend during that campaign, both of them will spend about $30 million. So, yes, we will spend the money that we have. And if you can donate to our candidates, that will help them. But also if you can help them, by speaking about the PPC. And if you try to have a conversation with a friend about our candidates, start with our ideas. We have the best ideas because we believe in you. We have faith in you. We have faith that you have the ability, the dignity, and the right to make your own decisions and determine your own destiny. Our enemy is our own government, not you, not the population. So if you want to help them, have the courage of your conviction and help them. But if you want to start a conversation to promote our ideas, the best thing to do is to start with the ideas by a question. Ask the questions to your friends. What do you think about the immigration today? And that will engage a conversation and maybe, oh my God, yes, there's a lot of immigrants who are coming here. They are not participating in our society. And after that, you can tell them, do you know there's only one party that is ready to solve that? Which one? The People's Party. What's that? Yeah, that's a new political party. They created that 6 years ago, and that's the only party who is ready to fight for you. If you start the conversation by saying, I saw the PPC candidates at this afternoon, and they were great. PPC? The mainstream media is canceling us. Half of the population don't know that the People's Party of Canada is a political party, a populist party ready to fight for you. So don't start the conversation by speaking about the PPC. Start the conversation by speaking about our ideas. And 70% of Canadians are saying we must end mass immigration. So they are on our side. So start the conversation with the ideas, and after that, tell them, there's only one party, and we have a candidate in our riding, and the party is the People's Party. You must vote for them. And like that, these ideas will be more influential, and we will start to win that battle of ideas. And our goal for this election is to have our first candidate elected, maybe more than one, and we'll have that voice in Parliament. And if it's not happening, we're going to be there. We know that Canadians can be a little bit slow with reform, but it will come. And it's more difficult in a parliamentary system because there's no proportionality. But our time will come. And, that's why I like what I'm doing. And being here today, you're giving me more energy to go on and do that fight with our candidates. And I want to thank them because it's they need some courage to be out there and speak because they have the right ideas and we have the right ideas, but we never know in politics what can happen. You can have a discussion with somebody that can go wrong because, some people don't like that we are fighting and they think that, we are here to split the vote. There's no split the vote. You vote, you own your vote. Nobody. You own your vote, that's your vote, and you must do what you want with your vote. And it's precious. So that's why I don't want you to waste your vote. Look at the platform of the Conservative. Look at the platform of the Liberals. I like competition. I like competition of ideas. So if you're not sure about our candidates and about our vision, go and look and read the platform of these other parties. And if, you like what we are saying and you think that it's the only way to save this country like we think, I hope that you support our candidates. They will be there. They will be there for you. And I want to come back here in British Columbia after the election. And that can be fun if we can have a couple of candidates elected here, new candidates, and, ordinary Canadians that are extraordinary now because they are fighting and they are standing up for us and for you. So like that, I want to thank everybody taking your time, being here. Thanks our candidates. And follow us on social media. Follow your candidates. You can be sure that this revolution is starting. We count on you and you can count on us. Thank you very much. Thank you.